Hello, Internet. I am Pastor Recoil, and welcome to my parish. Today is Ash Wednesday, and we're going to talk about it. Welcome to Pastor Recoil's Parish, where I talk about some things in the Bible that you may not have heard in church, either because it's not quite appropriate for all audiences, or it just isn't something that's easy to talk about in a sermon. Today's readings for Ash Wednesday are Joel 2, 12 through 19, Psalm 51, 2 Corinthians 5, the second half of 20 through 6:10, and Matthew 6, 1 through 6 and 16 to 21. Oddly enough, I'm not going to really talk about the readings today because Ash Wednesday is a day in the church when we focus on human sinfulness without ever actually talking about what sin really is. On Ash Wednesday, the more liturgical Christians around the world receive a cross of ash on their foreheads and hear the words, "Remember you are dust, and to dust you will return." It's a reminder of our place in the universe, reflecting Genesis 3's creation account where God made a human out of dirt. But ashes are also a sign of mourning and fasting when Christians begin the season of Lent, a season that's supposed to be a time of, well, sitting quietly in a corner and thinking about what we've done. But unfortunately, we've turned it into a season of not doing that. I think part of the problem is we have developed an incredibly harmful concept of what sin is in Christendom. It might not even be a particularly biblical concept of what sin is, but it's definitely harmful. I've heard folk try to explain sin as a mistake or an error, which I'm pretty sure isn't right. It makes people think that getting an answer wrong on a test is sin, or misfiling something is sin. It creates a sense of unachievable perfection that only ends up causing harm. Even worse, that definition is generally used when talking to children, which, adults tend to get told that sin is doing something that's against God's law. I used to think of sin in this way, that things of God were not sin and things that weren't of God were sin. But then I realized that's not really it either. One obvious problem is it's really hard to figure out what God's law is. Usually it ends up being a human interpretation of whatever that particular human thinks is God's law. And it inevitably will end up oppressing someone and causing harm. The other problem is it makes God into a massive jerk, where God says, "Obey the laws I decide you need to obey for no particular reason, or else." And I don't think God is that arbitrary. The first time the word sin shows up in the Bible isn't probably where you think. The first sin isn't Adam and Eve eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. It's their son, Cain, plotting violence against his brother Abel. This and some other passages about sin make me think that sin is more of an act of harm toward another human, especially when done to the harmer's benefit. Then that ties into the concept of original sin, an idea in Christianity that humans have this inherent wrongness about us through no fault of our own. Now, I don't think of original sin as any particular grossness or a punishment for the sins of our ancestors or anything like that. I do think original sin exists, but It's more of a description of humanity's habit of causing harm to benefit ourselves. That sort of selfishness is what I think the real problem is. And it's the opposite of what Jesus calls his followers to do, to love one another. This is where Ash Wednesday and the Lenten season become our chance to reflect on the ways that we have caused harm in order to benefit ourselves. Whether it's a tangible benefit or it's a benefit like ignoring hard truths that make us uncomfortable. See, in that reminder that we are dust, we both realize that we're all part of the same humanity and all part of the same world. We're made of the same stuff, all of us humans, and that stuff is the stuff of the earth. But as we progress through Lent and reflect on those ways that we have harmed others to benefit ourselves, it leads us to Maundy Thursday. After spending our time with reflecting on sinfulness, selfishness, and the ways we've hurt others, we get this command from Jesus on the evening before his death to love one another as Jesus loves us. This season of Lent, where we spend time thinking about the harm that we cause, prepares us for Jesus' crucifixion, in which Jesus gives himself up to rescue us from this sinfulness and lead us into a life of love. So if you want to see more content like this, check out the links to my right or click the logo below my face to subscribe so you'll know when my next video comes out. Thank you for watching, and take the time this week to love your neighbor as yourself, especially if you don't like them all that much.